Suddenly, it seems like we're back in the 1970s. Bohemian fashions, gas lines, inflation, and a nincompoop in the White House. Now, I came to America in the late 1970s as an exchange student. And there were so many things that were kind of wonderful and promising about America. But as I reflected about them, I realized that those things were, in a sense, the legacy of an older America. The 1970s was a time of confusion, of turmoil, of crisis in the Middle East, of later hostage-taking, stagflation, a kind of new term which referred to a stagnant economy on the one hand, and inflation on the other. There were gas lines. There was, well, Jimmy Carter himself used the term malaise, a sense of uneasy confusion and worry about the future. Now, we have the added malaise, you might say, of the COVID pandemic. But the combination of factors has created a deja vu, a sense of we've been here before, and not in a good way. Let's remember that this was the set of conditions that caused the American people to say enough, to throw the bum out, if you could say that, and to bring in a real change, Reagan. And I'm kind of hopeful that that's going to happen next year with the midterms and then in 2024. But let's focus on what's happening now. The most dramatic situation is the gas lines. Gas lines up and down the East Coast, stretching into the South. We see ridiculous fuel prices. Suddenly, fuel prices have more than doubled, 130% increase in fuel costs. Suddenly, $3 a gallon. We haven't seen that in years. And people are hoarding. People are starting to pour the gasoline into all kinds of containers and stack up the car. We might run out. Now, the Biden administration is like, oh no, don't hoard, because it's all going to be okay. This is not really a problem of gasoline. It's only a problem of supply. Well, let's look at how that problem of supply developed. Evidently, a group of hackers targeted the Colonial Pipeline. The Colonial Pipeline is based in Georgia, but supplies almost about 50% of the fuel for the East Coast. And apparently these hackers decided, perhaps as part of a ransom move, that's not entirely clear, a group called DarkSide, a kind of maybe cyber gang with Russian connections, evidently interested in holding this company for ransom, decided, let's just invade their cyber systems and bring them to a grinding halt. Now, they succeeded in doing this. The company website went down, its supply chain was completely disrupted. Now, you would think the Biden administration would jump immediately into kind of emergency response mode, but no. The first thing, and I was kind of astounded to see this, you have representatives of the government saying, oh, well, this is really not our problem. This is a private company. We have nothing to do with this. Yeah, if someone's holding them up for ransom, it's kind of their decision if they feel like paying. So interestingly, in the 1970s, you had the U.S. Embassy taken hostage by the militants in Iran. Here you have a similar, not hostage-taking situation, but ransom demand. But in this case, the government is trying to sort of, you may say, wash its hands off the matter. Now, finally, the Biden people have realized this is a serious problem. And so what are they doing? They're deploying tens of thousands of trains and trucks to shuttle this gasoline up and down the East Coast. So think about the environmental impact of this. The very administration that canceled the Keystone Pipeline, because it's an environmental hazard, is now forced to admit that pipelines are the best way to send gasoline up and down long distances. You think it's easier or better for the environment to send tens of thousands of trucks on the highway? Really? So what you see here is a combination of confusion and incompetence. You have this real a sinking feeling that the people running the show, and we all kind of know that it's not really Biden running the show. I mean, he, in a way, is this kind of doddering figure who, shuts down conversation, doesn't take questions. Am I supposed to say this? Is it okay for me to talk? This is Biden. This is the guy running the free world. But obviously, there's a little cabal behind him to whispering in his ear, say this, say that. This is the correct answer. Yes, your last name is Biden. So this is all going on, and it's comedy. I mean, the world is laughing at us. And I'm laughing in a certain way because, I read the other day, Northern Virginia is out of gas. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not overly sympathetic. Why? Because frankly, these are Biden voters. These are the people who tipped Virginia into the Democratic column. So you know what? Bend over, Biden voters, because you're getting what you voted for. You wanted a nincompoop. You wanted a kind of guy who wasn't all there. You wanted, Peter Sellers, Chance the Gardener in the White House. Well, you got him. And now you can expect Chance the Gardener type responses to serious problems, both on the domestic and on the international stage. Suddenly, inflation is back. 4.5%, which doesn't seem that high. But two things are worth keeping in mind. First of all, there was virtually no inflation under Trump. So this 4.5% represents a dramatic increase in inflation. And where could it go from here? Who knows? Number two, the government has become more cunning in the way that it counts inflation. So it takes things which have really increased dramatically in price and it puts them out of the inflation chart. So by rigging what basket of commodities are measured for inflation, the government can sort of, you may say, regulate the inflation rate, or more accurately, camouflage the true rate of inflation, the true increase in what people are actually paying for things. Now, Trump had just issued a statement, which I find kind of amusing. He goes, I see everybody's comparing Joe Biden to Jimmy Carter. And he goes, this is very unfair to Jimmy Carter. So Trump is kind of weighing in here on the presidential scales. I think what Trump is sort of saying is that until now, Jimmy Carter has clearly been the award winner, at least for the past, let's say, century or so, for presidential nincompoopery. But Carter's probably feeling pretty good right about now because he's thinking, wow, in such a short time, just a few months, there's a nincompoop on the stage who's going to take my first prize. I'm going to fall into second place. And Trump is saying that's right. Why? Because, I'm now quoting Trump, Jimmy mishandled crisis after crisis, but Biden has created crisis after crisis. First, there was the Biden border crisis. Then the Biden economic crisis, then the Biden Israel crisis, and now the Biden gas crisis. Now, Trump does have a point here that when it comes to the border, for example, there was no crisis. Biden made one happen. With regard to this one, Biden obviously didn't create the supply disruption. That was done by the hackers. But with his response to it, I think he's very much comparable to Carter. He shows us a kind of inability to comprehend the gravity of the situation. Having failed to do that, he responds with sudden panic. There's ineptitude all the way down. So we're in a little bit of a scary situation in the country. And our laughter and our chuckles and our ridicule camouflage a sense behind that of genuine worry about our future.